Then if I can share my screen, let me share the screen, share the entire screen so that I don't burn again. Somebody confirm to me that you can see my screen and you can see a slide on prevention, identity management. Cool. So one thing that I really like about this topic is in the fact that most of the things that you're going to be talking about are things that we've already covered or we've already talked about. And before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just look at the objectives for this unit. So the objectives here is that by the end of this unit, you should be able to describe what identity management is and its different parts. You should be able to explain how authentication works. You should be able to describe different types of authentication factors, and then identify tools and services used to support identity management. So those are the objectives that we have. Who is that is unmuted? Kindly mute yourself, Salem. Not Salem, sorry, Habakkuk. Sorry, Salem. It's not you, it was Habakkuk. Okay, cool. Okay, so that is what we are planning to do. And you remember this diagram, we've been talking about this diagram through and through. And for the better part of this time that we've been together, we've been talking about prevention. And in prevention, we did something on network hardening, system hardening, data security, and public key infrastructure. You did actually PKI in the morning. And now we have now jumped into identity management. So, just as a review, the security lifecycle consists of these phases. The 4 key phases of security lifecycle includes 1, prevention, which serves as the first line of defense. Then we have detection, which occurs when prevention fails. And then we said response describes what you need to do when you detect a security threat. If a security threat is detected, what are you supposed to do? And we said another name for response is remediation. Okay, and then there is analysis, which now completes the cycle as you identify lessons learned and implement new measures for the purposes of preventing the issue from occurring again in the future. And here I gave you an example of the lab that we did using Inspector, where you discover that maybe the Python library that we are using with our Lambda function was an outdated one. And now we needed to have one that is current. And so we removed the versioning number. And that means that every time a new version is released, our system will be able to pull the new updates and it will always be updated. So we will never have that problem recur again. So that is the whole purpose. You understand? It is the same way you will do it. Let's say you have a house and then you have this fence, and then you discover that your fence has how do we call it? It has a breach, and that breach, maybe Muizi, a thief penetrated through that breach and came into your compound and stole some stuff. So when you are initially the fence was supposed to prevent, it failed to prevent. Then now you've detected because something has been stolen from your compound. How do you respond? You respond by fixing that breach on your fence, okay? And then analysis means that you make sure that any other part, apart from that breach, any other part of your fence is properly hardened to make sure that thieves do not penetrate and come into your compound and cause you harm or steal your stuff. You understand? So that's what I would say about those cycles. So today we want to talk about identity management. And remember, we have been taught by Joy. Joy taught us about the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we are going to continue with what we have been building on since we started doing security. And now we are going to define what identity management is. And remember, this is a precursor to what we'll be doing on Monday. On Monday, we'll be doing IAM. And IAM is part of identity management. So you will get to understand how to implement what we are discussing now, maybe more closely to the cloud. And then you'll see services in AWS that work hand in hand with IAM, just to make sure, to ensure that you are able to implement identity management. So we say that identity management is the active administration of subjects, objects, and their relationship regarding access permissions, and it ensures that identities receive appropriate access to resources. It also ensures that systems remain scalable in granting access to resources. Let me explain something. So when we are talking about active administration of subjects, objects, and their relationship, a subject in a system can be a user. An object in a system can be an S3 bucket or an EC2 instance. And then their relationship. Their relationship means subject Musembi is allowed to access EC2 instances. He is allowed to access databases. But now, for these databases, Musembi is allowed to write to them. He is allowed to read from them, and is also allowed to modify or delete content from these databases. Now, comes in another user. User number 2 is Amy. Amy is allowed, yes, to read from the database, but she does not have permissions to write to the database or to delete anything from the database. So that's what we are talking about when we are looking at identity management on a high overview. So the permission that you're talking about, and you'll see us when you start going to do demos, you'll see us when you go to AWS, we'll be going to the IAM dashboard, and then we'll be clicking on permission. We'll be looking at users, creating users in the cloud. I remember in Linux, we created users. Yeah, we created users in the using the Linux terminal. We created groups. We added our users to the group. Then we set permissions. We changed ownership. So all that can be done even in the AWS in the AWS space. And for now, we'll be doing all of these things using console, or what I call ClickOps. ClickOps inamaanisha kuclick. You click on this, click on that, click on that. We call that one ClickOps. But later on, you'll discover that there are other tools that we can use to achieve the same results. These other tools that we're talking about are the likes of AWS CLI, that is AWS. That is AWS command line interface. And then there is also, you can also use SDKs, and then we can also use, I've talked about CLI, I've talked about SDKs, and then you can also use REST APIs to achieve the same functions. And there are also ways that we can also run scripts. You know, we can run scripts on shell to also achieve the same function. So we'll be talking about CLI much later. And actually, it is part of you guys that will be teaching us about CLI. It's very interesting. I'm waiting to really learn from you people and just see how you deliver on that. Awesome. So when you're talking about appropriate access, remember we talked about zero trust, that when you are starting with a system, every time, be it that you are a sysadmin, be it that you're a solutions architect, be it that you are a DevOps engineer, DevSecOps engineer, a security engineer, or even an identity manager, you have to start from zero trusting everybody and anybody. Then now you start giving permissions gradually, the permissions that people just need to do their jobs. And you know, in any organization looking at it, you will discover that there are different ranks in an organization. Like an example that I used the other day for just for explanation purposes, you might come to a bank. Let's say, for example, in a bank, you have a security guard. From a security guard, you have a lady that is seated at the inquiries desk. From the inquiries desk, we have cashiers, we have the operations managers, and all those other people. You'll discover that these people have different ranks, and if that organization has a way to define access to different parts of their system, they will define it depending on what does the guard need. You know, what does the inquiries person need? What does a cashier need, for example? You know, what does a teller need? What does an operations manager need? And just by looking at it, you will automatically see that there are parts of the system that the operation manager will be able to access that these other guys who are junior to the operations manager might not necessarily be authorized to access, you know. And then we say that also a good identity management system should be one that is scalable. Scalable, what do you mean by scalability? By scalability, it means that as people increase, let's say, for example, you've created a group and you've called that group devs. If you have devs in a group, it means that if you bring in more devs, they should be able to be added to that same group without breaking that system. You understand? Without breaking that system or without breaking that container or that group of users called devs, something like that. So scalability is very important. And about scalability, it can also go the other way around. Maybe you have this many devs because they are working on this big project, but now you've discovered that part of them maybe need to be moved to a different department, or they were with you temporarily, so you can remove them from the system with ease. That is also part of what? That's also part of identity management. Then the following table provides an example of identity management within a retail store. Yeah, so here we've been given a retail store. So we have a role column, a task column, and an access column. So we have three roles. We have the cashier, we have the security, and then we have a manager. So the cashier, the task for the cashier is to receive and exchange payment for a retail store. And the access is that they've been given access to cash register by using badge. So they can use their badge and access the cash register. That's the cashier. Then for security is the kazi yake or their work is to guard the retail store against criminal activity. You know, they guard the retail store against criminal activity. We normally say that the work of security in such an environment is to protect against inside and outside threat. Inside threat can be things like those who come to the retail store maybe to shoplift. External are those ones who come from out, maybe they want to rob the store. Then now the access level here, they have access to front and back of the building by using their badge. So they don't have access to the cash register because they don't need the cash register to do their work. You remember? Least privilege. Next, we talk about the manager. So for the manager, the task for the manager is to supervise store operations and personnel and ensure quality control. You know, they are to supervise store operations and personnel and ensure quality control. So what is the access level for the manager? So the manager has access to everything. That is, they can access whatever the cashier can access. They can access the front and the back of the building, which the security person can access, and any other and any other part of the building by using their badge. So here, all of these three roles access what they have been allowed to access by using their badge. So that those badge, they normally have something scannable, and these things it is this scannable code or this scannable barcode that interfaces with the system that has been used for identity management. So when they scan their badge, it shows that yes, you have access to this floor, you have access to this system, get in, you have access here, you have access here. So that one gives you access. I hope that one makes sense. And as usual, you'll read that notes and you'll understand. Now, we have the 3 A's of identity management, and we talked about this before, but I'm just going to brush through it. So authentication, or what we call Auth-N, authorization, what we call Auth-Z, and accounting. Yeah, authentication, authorization, and accounting. And with accounting, you can also add auditing, are the primary principles of identity management. So we say that authentication is concerned with proving the validity of a user or application's identity. So the example I gave about Musembi being a user in a system, and also us having an EC2 instance being given a role to play, and you will understand what you mean by roles when we get to that, when we get to IAM. So both of those two, they need to be authenticated and given permission to do what they want to do. You know, actually, they need to be authenticated. First of all, even before you go to what they need to do, they'll need to be given permission to access, permission to enter. You know, permission to enter. That's number one. Then number two, authorization is the process of determining what permission the user and applications have. What can they do? This EC2 instance, what can it do? Can it send API calls to S3? Or can it receive calls from this other place? You know, this Lambda function that you have, is it allowed to trigger? Okay, is it triggered by events, or is it allowed to trigger an event somewhere? Yeah, you know, what is it allowed to do? You know, the permission that you are allowed to have as a user or as an application. Then finally, we have accounting. So accounting is very important because, you know, I don't know if you people are old enough to know a song that Shaggy sang one day and said it wasn't me. You know, so we normally have a lot of blame games when things go south in an organization. But thankfully, there are systems that can actually audit and trace and say, it is Naboth that accessed this system, so he cannot jump story. I had the Luca story. I said, no, it was not me. No, it was you. Why? Because we have your footprint. We have your footprint. It shows that it is you who terminated that instance. It shows that it is you who caused that database to crash. For example, set naombea mabaya. I'm not praying evil over you. I'm just giving examples. I'm just giving examples. So in the future, if you accidentally terminate an instance, don't say that it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm not a prophet to prophesy doom over you. Okay? So when it comes to accounting, we are trying to establish auditing measures by logging access, commands, and changes that users and applications perform. Just to show you that indeed, whatever things that we are teaching you builds up to what we are talking about right now. Remember, when we were talking about Linux, we told you that there is a way you can run a command to see the history of all the commands that have been run in a system by a given user. So you see, in the process of investigating, for instance, you want to determine, is it Habakkuk or Frank that caused this system to fail? So you are trying to see user Habakkuk, what commands did user Habakkuk run? You run that one, you see. And then you check again and ask yourself, what commands did user Frank run? You are able to have that answer, and then you'll know who the culpable person is. So this one is for you to read. So you will be able to read all of these. It just reiterates the things that we have discussed about the AAA. So we have an example. AAA example login process. So identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting are common security steps that are enforced when a user logs into a system. So it is by you identifying yourself that you'll be able to be authenticated into a system. Then once you are authenticated, you'll be authorized to go to different parts of the system. Then once you are done, if anything, it needs to be done in terms of checking who did what, accounting/auditing will step in. So the following information is an example of a login principle. Now, a cloud engineer, in this case, we are going to use, who am I going to use? Let me see. Let me see who are in the call. I don't want to use examples of people that are not here. Don't asikie vizuri. Okay, cool. Yes, I'm going to use Befalin. So a cloud engineer. So Befalin uses an identification card that their company issued to log into the company computer. This card is used to identify her to the system. And as an engineer, she must be authenticated by putting in the password that she has been provided with. You understand? So she must input the password that she was provided with. After identification and authorization are complete, Befalin is granted access to the authorized services and folders that she is allowed to work on. You understand? That she's allowed to work on. That's now authorization. Every time she logs in and out of the computer, accounting is taking place. Accounting is taking place. So don't try, future engineers, don't try to be crafty. Don't think that you can game the system. Most of these systems understand, and I told you this, and it's very serious, by the way. The weakest link to the security of any network is the human element. So most organizations have set countermeasures to make sure that crafty people or lazy people or careless people, careless engineers, because they are there, careless engineers are barred from causing a system-wide collapse, or causing serious problems to the organization. Someone is saying things on the chat. I was not checking, sorry. Okay. That's some good banter. Okay, so as an analogy, consider the case of a visitor who tries to gain physical access to a company's facility. Recall the following. So for identification, something the visitor must prove. Something the visitor must prove. Not long ago, I visited a certain embassy, and then on their gate, the first thing that I had to do, I had to prove that I have an appointment. So that's an identification. And then they checked my name against their list. Then authentication, something that can be verified or validated. So they asked me for my ID. No, not really my ID. They asked me for my passport. So they took my passport and scanned it and looked at it and said, okay, You appear to be a real human being. You appear to be someone that carries this name that is in our system, that you indeed have an appointment. Then follows authorization. Authorization is specific access according to a role or level. And because I was not going to do serious stuff, okay, it was serious anyway. I was not going to do other stuff there. I was only allowed to access a part of the building that was relevant to me. First of all, going for my appointment. And then finally, accounting, a way to track the user or a visitor with a log. So if they wanted to know that if indeed I was there, and let's say, for example, in an unfortunate event, something happens and they wanted to know who was here at what time, they'll be able to track and know that we had Patrick, we had this other person, we had these other people at this time. They were here for this long. They went to this part of the building and they got out and ABCD, stuff like that. So you see, so that is a very good example for you guys to remember, for you guys to remember. No, siwachi Ruto. Ruto ni wetu. Tuko tuna nyinyi hapa. I'm not going nowhere. I'm just here. So that was good. That is good. Yes, Gideon, you're ahead of us, but it's true. AWS CloudTrail is normally used for accounting and auditing in AWS. That's very good. Yes, that's very good. Thank you. Authentication. So next, after we've seen how identification happens, let's now move on and talk about authentication and see how this happens. So how does authentication happen? So authentication happens by considering authentication factors. I don't know if you people have ever heard this thing called 2FA, 3FA, or MFA. Actually, MFA is the best term that is in use nowadays. Multi-factor authentication or multiple factor authentication. Yes, Ninoma, it's very good. I hope you mean Noma Poa. It's very good because it helps protect you. It helps really protect you because we have very many crafty human beings. Let me give you a story, a short one. Now, was it last year? I think sometime early last year, I was hacked in Facebook. I was hacked in my Facebook account was hacked. Na si ile hakile nyo nasikia sijui ati someone maybe came and posted nudes on my wall. No, it's not about that. What these guys did, I had already hit 5K followers. And now I don't know if they saw value or commercial value in that. So they hacked me out of my system. And by the time I was getting to my phone to see what was happening, I had actually received a notification on Yahoo, because my account was Yahoo Mail. That's what I used to open my Facebook account. Hey, good old days. So what happened there is, the long and the short of it, the hackers went to an extent of changing my Facebook password. They went to an extent of changing my Facebook, no, not Facebook password, Facebook email. Facebook email was actually changed. Then I got a notification on my Yahoo Mail that they had changed what? They had changed my Yahoo anti-focus. Mnanichekesha nyinyi watu. That they had changed my Facebook email. That was really sad. So Facebook does not have a way of actually handling such a situation, or even if it decided to take that route of trying to raise appeals, it will just have taken me a longer time. But being the ginger that I am, I remember that I have another Facebook account. I had like 2 accounts. This other account is on Gmail. So I went there and I changed the password for this second one because I had learned. And around the same time, they did the same thing. Around the same time, they did the same thing to my Telegram account. And my Telegram account had a lot of goodies because I was I was in very many cloud groups, very many software engineering groups. I was even an admin of some of them. And now the person that hacked me became an admin. It was a bit chaotic. So and now for Telegram, they used it to launch some I don't know how to call them, but some fraudulent things, and then that account was banned. But I'm glad that for Telegram, I'm back to Telegram and I'm trying to rebuild. I've been trying to rebuild. So these things are beautiful. No. I told you I'm security focused. I'm security focused from kitambo kabisa. So I don't just click on any link. I don't click on any link. I must check that link and I actually look at everything on that link. So I don't know how that happened, but I think the weakest link was my passwords. There's a time I was using one password across very many places. So I changed that. Yeah. So I think the message that is coming out of this discussion or from my unfortunate story is that if you have an account that you really value, an online account that you really value, please, if they have an option, of which I believe most of them have, to trigger multi-factor authentication, please accept it. It might be a lot of work, but do it, because I've been receiving alert that somebody crafty was trying to log into my, they were trying to log into my Gmail account and they were unable. Why? Because I have actually one of the factors is that I have what is it? Yeah, I get a code that must be inputted every time I log into my account from a foreign device or a device that I've never logged in before, or a network that I've never used to log in. So I hope that story has shown you the importance of using multiple authentication factors. So you say you can further control access by using multiple factors to authenticate or verify the identity of a user, process, or device. So there are three things that you will give when you are talking about multi-factor authentication. The first one is called something you know. Okay? Something you know. That's the first one. So something you know can be something like your password. Then something you have. What is it that you have? So something you have, in this case, can be like a card. You know, a card like what you are seeing here. Then something you are. Something you are can be something biometric. Something biometric like your fingerprint or your iris scan. That is something you are. So the three types of authentication factors are something you know, something you have, and something you are. Every authenticator has one or more authentication factors. You understand? Every authenticator has one or more authentication factors. So multiple factor authentication, or MFA, is an authentication method that requires multiple methods or ways of authentication. For example, you log into a bank website with your password and MFA is enabled. This might ask you for something that you have, such as your phone number. MFA is asking you for something that you know and something that you have. So when it asks you for that, so this is what happens. Yeah, and it is true. It is true. Even with the multiple factor authentication, you can still be hacked with those craftier hackers who know how to bypass such systems, and some of them even use OTP bots. That is very true. But look at it this way. Compare an account that has multiple factor authentication versus an account that doesn't have. If it is the same person that is coming to hack you, at least they will need to sweat some more before they get to you if you have MFA. You know, so MFA is very, very good. So if you have PayPal account, please protect it. If you have an online work account, like let's say Fiverr or Upwork, please protect it. If you have even your email account and your social media accounts, please protect them. Those are your digital assets. Okay, those are your digital assets. Okay, yeah, you use OneAuth for MFA. That's awesome. That's awesome. I use Google Authenticator, and I have another one called, what is the name of that other one? There's another one also from Microsoft. I have two authenticators for my accounts. Even for the cloud, when we will be setting up your accounts, when we'll be showing you guys how to set up your accounts, you'll discover that there is a requirement by AWS that your account must be protected by MFA, by MFA, and they specifically tell you to get an authenticator. So that authenticator will be pushing out a code. That code is what you'll be using now to log into your account, which is a good level of security. Look at this. So looking at this example, this is just a demonstration of what we talked about in terms of the authentication factors. So something you know, your password, the SSH key is blue, PIN 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can either use a password, a passphrase, or PIN as something that you know. So you enter something that you know, it goes to the web server or to the account that you have. For example, you have a password, you log into your Facebook, then access is granted. Okay, so these login credentials that goes into the web server are transferred to an authentication server. So the authentication server is what checks what you've provided versus what it has. That's why when you enter a password that is not what you had given for your username, you will get an error. But if you give a right one, then you'll be told you are okay, you've been authenticated, you can now continue doing whatever you need to do. And that note just tells you that. Then next is about something that you have, So this authenticates by using something that you physically possess, So the things that you can physically possess include things like a USB key, an RSA secured ID, a smartphone, a smart card, or even the physical keys. So these are just some of the things that you can use. So they might ask you that, yes, you have told us that you are Patrick and you've logged in using your password. Now, they want to send you a code to your phone. By sending you a code to your phone, they are trying to make sure that the phone number you gave is the same phone number that this Patrick that is trying to authenticate into the system really possesses. So they'll send you a code there. Then you'll be able to input that and you will be authenticated. Then we move on to another factor, which is something that you are. And here we are talking about biometrics. So biometric devices are used to validate something that you are. Biometric devices authenticate based on a human property. The following are some examples. So you can either do fingerprint. Those who have watched movies, you've seen those doors that have that have places that you put your fingerprint. You can do, there are some that use hand geometry. I've never seen, I remember hand geometry. It's like a pad, a touch pad, you spread your fingers and place them there. A retina scan na hapa tuzungumzie airdrop. A retina scan, and then there is facial recognition. I've worked in a place where we were using facial recognition. There's a place where I use iris recognition and signature analysis. All of this, and these pictures or images here just have to help with that. And now you can actually look at this, and we say accuracy in biometrics is the most important factor in this type of authentication. That's why when you try to put your finger on a fingerprint scanner and then it fails, you might be told maybe it is too oily. Can you try again until it works? If you are the real person that's being authenticated, because your fingerprint is unique to you. It is unique to you. Oh, there is DNA sequencing. DNA sequencing can also be used for authentication. I think that will be a bit too much. Identifiable PII. You've heard me talk about PII, where PII is personally identifiable information. So any data that can be used to uniquely identify an individual qualifies as PII. The following are some examples. Government identification card, such as your ID. Your ID is unique to you. You have a serial number, you have an ID number. It is unique to you. Phone number. Your phone number should also be unique to you. Your name. Your name should be unique to you. However, there's a possibility that you might go to a place and get that we have another Junior Abuto with the same names. But now your fingerprint should be unique to you. Your birth date, you might share this with some people. It is also possible to get maybe Justin and Musembi were born on the same date, or maybe even same date but different years. So birth date can be shared. Account numbers should be unique to you. Your email address should be unique to you. Billing addresses can be shared, especially if you're using, say, for example, a billing address for let's say, an estate or a company. It can be shared with a number of people. But now, what enables threat actors to do what we call social engineering is they can combine these 8 factors. You know, they can combine these 8 factors. And I saw something scary the other day, showing you that, you know, there are these guys who go to Facebook or these other social media sites and post every detail of their life. You know, they post every detail of their life, that, oh, I go to this school, oh, I live in this estate, oh, I went to the bank the other day, oh, I have traveled to this other country, oh, I have this appointment, you know. And then you forget that when you do that, maybe in between there, you accidentally share some document that has this PII. You know, and then someone is able to piece these things together. So they can actually open a file on you and then piece all these things together about you. Have your picture, have your location where you live, have where you work, have where you go to school, have your family details, yeah, even know your routine. So sometimes these things that we think we are keeping up with the Joneses can be risky. So just be careful what you share. Don't share your PII anywhere. You know, don't share your PII anywhere, because not everybody is a good actor. We also have threat actors on those streets. I hope that makes sense. So when you talk about you keeping your PII, yes, and people can get catfished with your PII. Someone can actually create a very good sub story about you, you know, and go to your contacts, because you see when they hack you, when they hack you and they've already made a profile of you, they already know you very well, they know the people that you're connected with, they can easily go and pass stories to them about you. Oh, you know, Subaru came, I was abducted. Oh, these people are asking for money. Oh, and no, yeah, you know, some people don't do hakikisha. Some people just are driven by emotions, and they get conned, only to discover that they were actually victims themselves. So PII needs to be protected because it is something that only the individual can uniquely identify. Passwords can be cracked. Systems can be hacked, but PII is something that cannot be cracked. Why? Because PII combines all those 8 factors to fit. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It has to fit or fit. If it does not fit, it is not you. You understand? Information about you must fit. If it does not fit, it is not you. Therefore, it is important to keep it in a safe place. PII can fall under all 3 authentication factors. Like, for example, something you know your ID number, I know my passport number, something you have, your bank card, something you are, your fingerprint. You see? So those are some of the things that you really need to keep very, very safe. Okay? You see, even something like an ID card. An ID card is very, very important. I remember there was that time that if you lose your ID card, it is very possible that maybe someone might go and use it and even register a new line, you know. And it's unfortunate that some people will not even see that is not you on that ID. You know, that's not you on that ID. That was back in the day. But nowadays, I think they have added an extra factor where, apart from you giving the ID, you're also supposed to give a headshot. Yeah, you're also supposed to give a headshot. So I don't know if you're going through the trouble of wearing makeup to look like Abby, so that you are given a line with her ID. But you see, all that. So it's very important for you to safeguard your own stuff. And Kitambo used to argue and say, because lines are things that are really, really important, why don't they even introduce fingerprinting? You know, why don't they even introduce fingerprinting? Because that's like the highest level of a good level of identification. You know, a good level of identification. So let's look at password policies. So one day you'll be working in this organization and you'll be a security engineer. And one of the things that security engineers do, apart from doing defensive security, they also do protective security. And in protective security, you are tasked with coming up with different runbooks or operational guidelines for the organization. One of the things that we do in security is that we define things as serious as password policies. So in password policies, you might sit down and say, for this organization, what we have decided is that your password must be 12 length in character, number 1. It must combine capital and small letters. It must have a number or 2. It must have symbols, And apart from all that, after you've accomplished all that, your password must be rotated at a specific duration, after a specific duration. Rotation means you have to change your password at some given point. There's a course that I was doing on security engineering where we were taught, they were saying, okay, our instructor was telling us that organizations, in order to cut down on administrative tasks, they give some permissions to some of their users within their systems to do what we call oh man, I hope my network is still good. I hope I'm not dragging. Yeah, to do what we call self-service. So self-service, it means that if you forgot your password, you can change your own password. You know, you can change your own password. These things that you see us doing, that I've forgotten my Gmail password, I can change my password. That is because permissions have been granted for us to do that. It is never automatic. There are organizations where if you forget your password or lose your password, you will need to go and look for the systems administrator, wherever they are, for them to reset the password for you. You understand? Like, for instance, for us as as instructors, the Canvas bit that we have access to, we cannot self-set the password. Once we have changed the first password that was provided for us, anytime we forget this password, we need to reach out to the Canvas team, to the AWS Reset team, for them to help us reset our password. I hope that one makes sense. So password policies are important because they help in defining rules that control how passwords are created and maintained. And I've just talked about rotation. Why is password policy important? Now see, a weak policy, small number of characters, no complexity, and no password age, can be cracked in a matter of seconds. You know, then passwords are often the only thing that stands between data and who is trying to access the data, unless MFA is installed or enabled. Then we also have something that we call a strong policy, which ensures that passwords are complex and are changed within a certain time frame. And that's what I was talking about when I was talking about rotation of your password. Now, a strong password is difficult for the system to compute, but easy for humans to remember. You know, a strong password is difficult for the system to compute, but easy for humans to remember. So you, as the person who is having this password, you will know that my password has these characters, and now you'll be able to keep it somewhere safe where you can use it. So make sure that you remember that. You remember that. You know, look at this, for example. This has a capital letter P. It has small letters, RDW. It has some characters, $, then it has numbers, and then it has a special character. This special character is, oh man, am I still breaking? Someone confirm to me. Am I breaking?
No, you're good.
I am good.
You are.
I'm good. I am. Yes, comes and goes. Ooh, hey. Jehovah. I'm sorry, guys. Let me see if I can change where my network is. Just a second. Give me a second. Yes, you are breaking. Give me a second. What about now? What about now? Somebody?
It's okay now.
It's okay. Okay, cool. So in case I start breaking again, just let me know. So we have something that we call dictionary attacks. So a dictionary attack is a list of predefined words as password that is used to log into a system. So an attacker can sit down with a list of commonly used passwords and try to attack the system using them. You see, this is our dictionary with the different passwords. And then we have first attempt, second attempt, third attempt, then the fourth attempt succeeds. That's why we are always advised not to use our old passwords, not to use common password, and also use very, very strong passwords and rotate them as often as possible. Rotation is important because by the time someone gets hold of, let's say, for example, someone is already trying to guess my Facebook password right now. or they started last week. And then I remember it is 30 days and I have a policy within myself that I rotate my password every 30 days. So I go to Facebook, I change that password. So by the time they crack and discover that, this is the password, they'll have found that it's no longer working. So that's why we are told, don't use an old password, because if I had an old password, their next attempt will be to try and see if I went back to that old password. Or they will just take this password and add a character to see. So try and use unique passwords. And there are very many tools online that you can actually use to generate passwords for you and store those passwords for you so that you can always revisit them anytime you forget them. So things like, is it called BitLocker? Has anyone ever used BitLocker? BitLocker, BitLocker. BitLocker is a very good password manager. So you can generate your unique password. You can give it the rules that you want. You can define your length, and then you can generate your password and use that password in your different systems or in your different accounts. I hope that one makes sense. So you will read about this, or let us just go through it together. When you define password rules, you must understand the types of attacks that password authentication can be subject to. One type of attack is what we call a dictionary attack. So a dictionary attack attempts to systematically enter each word in a dictionary as password until it finds a match. So that dictionary is written by the attacker. It's not that the normal dictionary we know that has A, then it goes to AB, then ABB or ABA, blah, blah, blah. No, there are words that the attacker defines. So that's the dictionary. Countermeasures for dictionary attack include enforcing a strong password policy and locking out access after a fixed number of unsuccessful attempts. And I've seen very many mobile banking platforms apply this. If you try the first time, it refuses. Second time, refuses. It tells you have one more attempt. If it refuses, you are locked out. Same thing with our SIM cards. If you enter your PIN the first time, it refuses. Second time, it refuses. After a number of attempts, you are asked for your PUK, So all of that is a protective mechanism. So another type of password authentication attack is what we call a rainbow table attack, which uses pre-computed hashes or text passwords. It uses pre-computed hashes of text passwords. These pre-computed hashes are compared against stolen hashes to find their corresponding password. Take that one in face value. That is above our scope. So don't scratch your head about that. Then again, hash has been repeated here. We have a password hash, which is a unique encrypted value. It is a unique encrypted value.